Hey, don't forget my new art book, Gray Matter Drip, The Art of Chris Anderson, is available now through cosmiclionproductions.com. Today, I am talking to cartoonist, artist, writer Katie Skelly on the comic book Gene Pool episode, where she talks about Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Welcome to Chris Anderson Comics. All right. Hey, everybody. I have a very special guest today. I've been excited to get her on for a long time. Everybody, welcome Katie Skelly. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really great. We first met at, I think the first time we met was at Permanent Damage, the show at Permanent Records that Keenan Keller and Tom Neely put on. And I picked up your book Heaven. It was the first thing I ever got of yours, and I loved it so much. It was the
Thank
first
you.
issue. I just recently got the second two, and I just can't wait for more. Hopefully,
Oh,
there will
thank
be
you.
more.
Yes.
Um, but I but I really wanted to have you on the show. So I release, the book, the episode that goes over your like newest work or whatever. I guess it's not your newest work technically, but uh first, and then but usually I record the second episode that's released first, which is the comic book Gene Pool episode. And for that one you picked Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. um what tell like I
Why?
purposely I purposely didn't do any research on it because I never read it until this morning. I purposely didn't do any research on it, and I'm just curious why this was the book.
I have been on a real tear lately going
Hmm.
through slave labor graphics comics because I
Okay.
started reading those in high school and they
Okay.
were so formative for my language in comics because to that point, I found a few things that like connected with me, but there was just something about like being 14, 15, and like
Yeah.
Johnny just like spoke to that mode, to
Yeah.
like the
Yep.
angst and like finding little random things funny. So, also, I have a podcast called Thick Lines with my friend Sally Madden, and we
Yeah.
take a look at comics and everything. And I knew she would not want to look at Johnny the Homicidal Maniac with me.
Really.
So, I saved it for you.
Beautiful. So like part of the reason that I do this episode is to, cartoonists get excited about the things that hooked them when they first, got into comics. Like I found that I hadn't revisited those books in years, and doing episodes on this, I just got really excited and inspired again by the same thing that hooked me a million years ago. So I totally get that, and that's exactly like why I do this thing. But yeah, like it seems to be that age. Like it was for me too, like 13, 14, that the claws first got into me. So this came out in like 95, the first printing anyway,
Hmm.
because I noticed as I was scrolling up, um this is like the what is it, the sixth printing, and I'm sure it went more than that. This was an insanely popular book, um
Yes.
and I don't know how it got past me. It seems like something that, so 95, I would have been a junior in high school. It seems like something that should have gotten landed in front of me, and I don't know why it didn't.
Hmm.
um But so slave labor, probably not the, wisest choice of names for a publishing
Yeah,
company.
that's one of the many sort of knots in their story that I
Yeah.
find really compelling. It could exist, but I haven't really seen like a complete history of the slave labor story. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of nostalgia is really in the air when it comes to comics and talking about comics, but I
Yeah.
don't really see anyone talk fondly about slave labor or any of those releases.
Did they
So,
talk negatively about it?
just not at all. I think it's kind
Just
of
not at all, right.
a point in comics history that I think a lot of people would like to forget, but not me.
Well, it was a strange time. So, like, 95, you had, like, things were starting to crash in the industry, right? Like, for the mainstream comics. But, like, looking at their lineup, there were things like Lenore and stuff, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I brought up Hot Topic, you
Mhm.
know, the store, and I was like, "I feel like those were books that were, like, sold in Hot Topic, right?" And they're like, "Yes, there's this whole story that goes along with Slave Labor Press and Hot Topic." Do you know anything about that?
I don't, but when I was talking to Sally about it, she said she remembered picking stuff up at Hot Topic, and I was like, "No way." But that confirms it. Cool. I didn't know that. Or
Yeah,
I
so,
wasn't
like,
sure of it. It sounds too good to be true.
well, apparently, hmm. So I was talking to a cartoonist that is very knowledgeable about all sorts of stuff, comics wise, and I don't want to get it wrong, but here I go anyway. But apparently, like, somehow slave labor and Hot Topic were just coming out at the same time. Maybe there was like a co-ownership thing. It's like people who own slave labor also had like an investment in Hot Topic or something like that.
Hmm.
And uh like this book sold like so many copies because they put it in the stands of this shop, and because they started printing the, you know, the characters and stuff on their shirts, and you know, like the the people who would shop at Hot Topic, I guess apparently, like, the book grew, and because the book grew, it brought in more people to Hot Topic, and so Hot Topic grew as a company too, so that they sort of like both exploded at the same time because of each other. It's kind of a
Mm.
weird thing, and it got me thinking about, where else can you put comics that people will see that aren't necessarily comics people, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
get them into books, because I mean it worked apparently.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Well, I know Greg and Fake who do the Santos Sisters comics,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have been trying to get they do put comics in, like, head shops, but I
Mhm.
think they were also, like, really trying to get it in 7-Eleven. I don't know if that ever
Yeah.
panned out, but I think that's brilliant. I wish
That
7-Eleven
is
would pick them
brilliant.
up. Yeah.
Seriously, I mean, like, this whole generations of people who picked up their first comics at 7-Eleven. I was just, at the end of that, you know? Like, I remember
Mhm.
picking them up when I was real little at, like, convenience stores, not necessarily 7-Eleven, because I grew up in the Midwest. I don't know if we had 7-Elevens, but,
Mhm.
um, so Honan Vasquez, right? That's how you say Honan? Is that how you
I
say
think
his
it's
name?
Yonan.
Yonan, okay, Yonan Vasquez. He's an interesting cartoonist. So as we go through, like, and look at the pages, they kind of look like stuff that, like, a high school, you know, person would draw in their, like, notebooks a little bit,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of the appeal of it. It does
Yeah.
have a very sort of crude appearance on surface
Mhm.
level, but, rereading these, it is a pretty sophisticated storytelling method that he has. It moves
It
really
is.
fast and it's really
Mhm.
relentless, but I think, as a comic, like, as a storyteller, I can't find fault in really any of the Johnny comics, and I've also been, Johnny was so popular, as you said, that there were also, like, 1,000 spin-off comics that came from it. There was,
Yeah.
like, Debbie, who's in, I think, the 2nd issue, got her own series called I Feel Sick, and then Squee, this character, got a series, and
Mhm.
the, God, who else? Bad Art Collection, I think, had shades of it in there, and then, like, Filler Bunny is another thing I think that spun out of here. So, yeah, he
Yep.
really did have this sort of little empire at this time
Yeah.
period, and that's why I find, like, the lack of discussion around him and around this really perplexing. Is it because it's so embarrassing? Because, I mean, reading through it again, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of, like, random, "Isn't this crazy?" Like, late
Right.
90s. sort of humor. But I mean, that isn't really that different from what we were seeing in like the early days of the internet. So
Mhm.
it's it's perpetually interesting to me.
Yeah, I looked him up just a little bit, and so apparently, he created Invader Zim, the
Mhm.
cartoon, also, and apparently that character lives in this Johnny the Homicidal Maniac world as well. So I don't know if they're like literally connected, but that's the way that he describes it. Apparently,
I feel really confident that Johnny has a cameo in Invader Zim.
is
Invader
that right?
Zim came out on TV in the late '90s, early aughts as well,
Yeah.
and I remember really liking it, but I think it got canceled, like, really soon after it debuted, but now it's sort of this cult classic, and I think they might be making new issues, but they definitely made comic issues of Invader Zim as well.
Well, again, it's in one of those, it's, all over, like, I remember it being all over when you'd walk through the mall looking in Hot Topic, you would see Invader Zim shirts, like,
Sure.
all over there. So his relationship with them is, uh, pretty tight, it seems like. I don't know
Mhm.
exactly what it is, but, that's certainly helpful for spreading the word on something, you know?
I it must sell. I think it's
It's gotta.
doubly yeah, it's doubly interesting because now, like, this aesthetic is so harsh, and I think it kind of
Yeah.
flies in the face of things that would be in Hot Topic now, like, I'm thinking about, Squishmallows and anime
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
manga and things that are very contoured in, like, a pleasing way, and Johnny is so, sort of scatterbrained and harsh to look at, like I said, this it works for the storytelling somehow, but as standalone images, it can be really difficult to want to keep looking at them, at least for me. I
Yeah.
have an
Yeah.
appreciation, but it doesn't align with, my favorite types of comics at all, but it's still in the recesses of my memory regardless.
Right. Yeah. It's really interesting too because he sort of does this, like, kind of phony kind of introduction, of the character in here, and, um, it he sort of talks about, like, how oh god, I can't find it exactly here, but how, there's basically, like, these downtrodden, like, or goth kind of people who walk around, turn to like actual people who feel that way into a laughable thing with like theatrics and white makeup put on bad skin. And it just
Mhm.
made me kind of laugh because it did become sort of like a phase, right around the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at that point, subcultures were like just starting to get really commodified in this way. I
Hmm.
remember going to the Warped Tour and, like skateboarding was
Yeah.
really big when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was like you could just own all this skateboarding stuff, but you didn't necessarily have to do it. And
Hmm.
Hot Topic has certainly
Yeah.
profited off that as
Oh yeah.
well.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting, like, at that point, you didn't really have to, like, worry about being called a poser,
Yeah.
you
Not
know?
yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't know, I kind of feel like and, now the place that we're in, like, identity is so split and it, like trends come up so quickly that you could,
Hmm.
absorb everything and, like, put all of it back out, and you would be right back where you started, like, it's all kind of meaningless now, but at this
Yeah.
time, being sort of gothy, like, it still felt like, "Oh, you have an edge."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, they start the book off with this Squee character who's not named yet. It's just this kid with a teddy bear. His parents are kind of, um, neglectful. Mom definitely is. And there's this line in here that's with the dad. It says, "I'm busy right now working. That's all I seem to do now. I have to work to keep you alive, to feed you. I haven't smiled once since you were born. Go to sleep." It's like, oh man, that's harsh. And I can't imagine that he was very. I wonder how old he was when he wrote this because that's sort of an insightful thing that you wouldn't. really pick I don't feel like you would pick up on that unless you were like the age of at least had friends who were parents at this time, you know? It's pretty
Mhm.
insightful, or unless your parents actually said something like that to you, you know?
I wonder about that. I mean, it's so extreme that
Yeah.
it feels like total fiction, but I don't want to
No,
psychoanalyze
yeah.
Yonan.
Right.
I believe he was in his, like, mid to late 20s when he
Okay.
was working on this, but
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong.
There are I'm not sure. Yeah, somebody will let us know, I'm sure. But there's some really like deep, insightful writing in this, you know, underneath everything, which I was really impressed with, actually. I wasn't expecting it.
Mhm.
Um, so, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no.
Okay. Um, yeah, so we are finally he hears this noise and goes into the bathroom, and Johnny, the homicidal maniac, is in his bathroom cleaning a wound, um, talking about, you know, the thrill of the kill basically, and uh says, I'm your neighbor, don't leave your window unlocked anymore.
Yes.
Because I had to break it to get in.
Yeah. I he has a line in there that's like, "I need Bactine to clean off the blood. Some of this blood is mine." I think that's when it kinda hooked me, the "some of
Yeah.
this blood is mine" line, because I was
Uh-huh.
like even as a kid, I was like, "Oh, this is smart." Like, this isn't just kind of gore for the sake of gore. Like, there's a brain that's operating behind this.
Yeah, yeah, he took a second to think about this for sure. It's not just like, you know, masturbatory make as you go comics. There's actually forethought in this, you know?
Yeah, I mean, some of the, like, the Happy Noodle Man or, like, Filler Bunny
Sure.
or those other things I feel like are much more off the cuff, and we do get some of those in these issues too.
Yeah. It's weird. I wonder how long of a time period that he took to make this first issue too, because I also noticed that his style changes a bit and his cartooning grows and gets better as the issue goes on.
Mm.
And it changes. A
Mhm.
little bit. I'll point it out later, but this is a story about a guy going around and asking people about, you know, crime in the city, and he's part of the crime neighborhood crime council and is interviewing people. Um,
Yeah, this is where I don't know, I just feel like the '90s sort of flavor comes in because when's the last time
yeah.
you heard of anybody doing surveys door to door? But
Uh
this
huh.
is where we get some of the, like, essential Johnny lore, which is that he's killing people because he needs to keep painting this wall in his house red,
Yes.
and it keeps when it dries, it changes color, so that's
Yeah.
why he always needs fresh blood, although that really is only referenced couple, like a handful more times throughout the issues that come after. So I wonder if it was kind of like a conceit that made storytelling easier, but ultimately, like, he didn't need it. He could just kind of abandon that for like the character work of Johnny.
Yeah.
It's it's like this should not be appealing to me. I have to be honest, but there's something about it, and I like the elasticity of the characters as well. Like, at any moment, they can, like their limbs can get really long, they can
Yeah.
their face can contort in a million different ways. Even,
Hmm.
like, this panel, "I never drank her blood, but I needed it," like, that's a really dynamic composition. Like, that really
Yes.
pulls your eye in, and he's this kind of weird tarantula figure, and I don't know that I ever completely figured out what that Z question mark means. It comes up on other characters. There's, like, a styrofoam Pillsbury Doughboy that has it on his shirt as well.
I in just like the vaguest research that I did on this, I really tried to do as little as possible, just so we could talk about it, and
Sure.
like I could discover too. The Z question mark stands for question sleep because he is an
Right.
insomniac.
Oh, that's what it
Yes.
is.
Hmm.
Okay. Wow.
Yep. and apparently it was on a lot of merch and stuff. I think, and actually, I think maybe at the end of this, there's even merch that has the Z question mark on it.
Perfect.
Um, so this Happy Noodle Boy is a comic within the comic. I don't know
Mhm.
how often that was done back then. It was probably pretty innovative to think along those lines, to get sort of reverse meta. I'm not sure how to use that word properly, but
I think you're using it right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely loved these as a teen because,
yeah,
it's a lot of, like, random humor, it's a lot of cursing at people and telling them that they're stupid, and, like,
yeah,
as a child, you need to hear that, and
yeah,
that carries throughout all of the stories, and as I reread them now as an adult, I can kind of see, he knows Johnny is ridiculous. He knows Happy Noodle Boy is ridiculous, but at the time, it felt so like, "This person is speaking to me," I
yeah,
didn't read it as parody at all, like
yeah,
self-parody.
yeah.
I
That's
don't think
yeah,
I knew that that could exist.
right, right, right. And that's something that as a young teen or even preteen that you're trying to grow and become your own thing, and you're trying to rebel in your own little ways, and that really speaks to people that age.
Mhm.
And whether he knew that or not when he was creating this, he must have, um, or been
I
so
mean,
close to that age and just still it was still resonating and vibrating. I mean, when you're in your early 20s, you're still feeling a little bit of that stuff.
sure. This also could be the first time that people saw that sort of feeling presented in this way in a comic, because I
Hmm.
do think the readership also skewed a little bit older as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a real watershed moment, this comic, I think. And what's really kind of endearing is those letters at the end, or I'm sorry, at the beginning. No, they're at the end. Sorry. The letters at the end that
Hmm.
Yonan is writing to the fans and the readers, in the second issue, he says something like, "Oh, I didn't even, ask for letters, but we got letters."
Yeah.
And originally this was going to be 6 issues, but now it's going to be 7. So you can kind of read like his enthusiasm for the work in the series of the comic, and I find that very sweet.
Yeah. He has these one-offs that are sort of um landscape too, which I found interesting. It almost feels like he was sort of making them not with the thought of collecting it as a book in mind when he started. Maybe he was playing with the format and trying to, like, what if I do it as a strip or
Hmm.
something like that?
Yeah, sure.
Um, this one is just about, he's trying to go out and eat at a restaurant, and someone says he's a wacky looking character, and it sets him off, and he ends up just wiping everybody out in the taco smell restaurant.
Yes.
But even this has some moments in it, like this one right here, where these two girls and says, what's going on? Well, that lady called that guy wacky, and then just in the middle of it, it's like almost this pause where you know, you're with Johnny the whole time, and then you go over to this one, and it just sets him off even more, and it just I don't know, something about it feels like that was the perfect, and it's smack in the middle. Like the pacing of it just worked really well.
Mhm. I mean, even look at the second panel, it's
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
dynamic. We're looking
Yeah.
up. We have that great
Hmm.
ceiling. Like, there's kind of no reason for us to be in, like, the tacos point of view here, you know what I mean?
No.
But it's just a strong choice.
Yep.
I love that.
That's exactly what that is.
I mean, if you're, going to be doing the same kind of story, I mean, they are all pretty formulaic, and then
Yeah.
occasionally they veer into this really morose territory where Johnny wants to kill himself, and those are always like a little, but
Hmm.
yeah, this like he has good comedic timing, and he has a really good sense of space and how to like delegate characters in space.
Yeah. Um, at this point, I don't know if he's ink washing it, markers, or what, but you see how it shifts here
Mhm.
to where he's got this like tonal thing going on.
Mhm. It looks like marker to
Um,
me.
yeah, yeah,
Could be
yeah,
wrong.
it does. But he used it very effectively, like in things around the eyes and stuff. And I feel like I just saw that all over the place at this time, probably after this came out.
Mm. Yeah, it's a little Todd McFarlane-y.
Yeah, and look at
It's a
the
little
way that
corn music video. Sorry.
yeah, there you go. There you go. Well put. Um,
Thank you.
uh,
Great band, nothing wrong
um,
with them.
um, okay. He threw me there. The,
Stand by it.
okay. The, just the cartooning on these people getting, like, obliterated. I don't know, for
Mhm.
whatever reason, just their body language is so effective to me.
Oh, yeah, you can tell he loves doing, like, a splat with the ink. Like,
Oh,
there is
yeah.
no
Uh-huh.
shortage of those, and but they are really, like, elegant. Yeah. A lot of, heads getting blown up and necks
Yeah.
getting slit and just eruptions of, like, arteries. It's really nice.
Yes. There's a, this is like a weird interlude comic because these characters are sort of being taken over by these, like, elder gods, these, like, crosswalk characters, and just start fighting.
Mhm.
So it doesn't really have
Yeah.
anything to do with Johnny. I don't know if in later issues they're brought up again, or if there's
Not
sort of an antagonist or
really.
something.
Not especially, but you see throughout his throughout the stories, he has this kind of like, Giger obsession, and I
Oh,
think he just kind of needs to exercise that every now and then.
yeah.
He has aliens in later stories that are very
Oh, yeah.
Giger-esque,
Mhm.
and
Well,
you'll
there's
see
one
it
right
in
here, I mean.
posters. Yeah, exactly. You'll
Mhm.
see it in
Mhm.
posters behind Johnny, you know. I anytime they make a reference to something that is like material in our world, it always strikes me as really funny and kind of out of place. At one point in the second issue, Johnny is out with Devi and they're talking about films. And she's like, "I love Brazil. Gilliam is God." And I've kept like Gilliam is God in my head for so long because I was just like,
Really.
that sounds really stupid. Like like, not the sentiment, but just this sort of idea of like, "Oh, these 2 characters are, like, really getting along so well that this is something that
Yeah.
would, like, pass between them and it would be okay." Just this sort of, like, declarative thing. I don't know, there's just something about it that's really awkward and funny. It's just stuck with me. The same as, "Some of this blood is mine." I don't know, it's got bon mots.
Yeah, it was just that formative time and the formative issue.
Mhm. Wobbly Head
Again,
Bob
his
is annoying to me. I can
yeah.
I can always kind of fast forward through these.
Again, he's playing with a different cartooning style though, which is
Mhm.
interesting. Let's fast forward through it then.
It's almost like a little Dave Cooper-ish too.
Yeah. And all of his style is a little bit Burton-esque, you know?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I know
Um,
he's a Giger head. Maybe like a little Egon Schiele,
mhm.
like
I got a
German
lot of that in
ex
me too.
oh, cool. Like some German expressionism, some like Max
Yeah.
Ernst. Um, yeah. He loves it. But yeah, definitely Burton-esque. I'm surprised that there's not a film, like a Burton film of one of Yonen's creations, because it feels like they're just 2 peas in a pod.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Um, this is like just a one-off of him sort of like creatively torturing all sorts of different people. This
Mhm.
snake, about to grab this person's genitalia. Um, and and then the payoff is, dear diary. Today some friends came over, so that's
Mhm.
the whole thing.
Got him.
I keep yeah, I keep trying to read what's in these borders because there's writing in there, but I can't make heads or tails of it.
Hmm. It might be nonsense.
Worship me,
Yeah, that sounds right.
something to head. Anyway,
Subliminal messaging at its
yeah.
finest.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, okay, so Johnny the Suicidal Maniac is,
Right.
I just find these to be really morose, and as a, like, depressive teen, I could
Mhm.
certainly see myself in these stories, and now I take Wellbutrin, so I don't get them as much, but
Mhm.
I I always found it interesting that they would change it to, like, Johnny the Suicidal Maniac, anytime you had
Yeah.
one of these stories. I like it. But you have to kind of, like you have to suspend not disbelief, but you have to sort of, like, in your mind, negate the stories that came before this in order to appreciate it. Because it's like Johnny is so silly, and all of a sudden to sort of introduce this, like, very real concept into his world is a little bit disturbing,
Right.
and, he has Johnny is nothing if not a philosopher. He has all kinds of theories about people and his place in the
Mhm.
world. I'm always kinda like, "Why doesn't he just leave this house?" Because it feels like the house is what's causing the problem, like, the wall needs
Right.
blood. Later on, he says, "I have to paint the wall with blood or else, like, an entity will come out of it." And it's like, if you hate people that much,
Ah.
just, like, leave and let the entity come out. Like,
Right.
go to
Yeah,
Florida.
let it do its work, right.
Yeah, but no.
Nope.
Nail
Um,
Bunny talks to him, that's, like,
m
the angel on his shoulder.
yeah.
The lore all, like, came rushing back to me. It was very satisfying,
It's
and the
funny
little
because
doughboys.
the bunny is trying to stop him from doing it, and then
Mhm.
this, like, weird satanic, demonic Pillsbury Doughboy thing is trying to, like, egg him on.
Mhm.
And, we're dealing with this murderer here. You really wonder which one is doing the right thing at this point too. It's kind of
Sure.
like it's weird. It's a
Mhm.
weird thing. And then there's
Yeah.
this, like, fetus in a jar that ends up talking to him too, like, I don't know what that is.
Mhm. You know, why not? At
Mhm.
this point, why not?
Why not? We're just throwing it all at the wall, at the blood wall.
Lot of scatological humor. Love it.
Mhm.
Gotta have it. There's
Mhm.
a lot it gets, like, much grosser in later episodes or issues too.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Spending time with Happy Needle Boy, we got it.
Yes.
Dear Diary, today I stuffed some dolls full of dead rats I put in the blender. I'm wondering if maybe there really is something wrong with me. I mean,
That's what that's that's what made him question it.
yes. But it's again, it's just so extreme. It's so over the top.
Yeah.
And if you're like feeling isolated and you're in this like
Mhm.
hormone rush that you can't understand. I mean, this is something that is really satisfying. It's also, I used to think about if my parents found these comics,
Mhm.
would they lock me up? Like they felt so transgressive at the time.
Yeah, and, and you can and you're feeling these things, and then this thing comes along that sort of you you understand it, and it feels like it's talking to you, but it's also you can laugh about it. It's laughing
Mhm.
about it, and maybe that in a way is healing, you know, to
I think so.
eh, to people who feel that way when they're young.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely cathartic. And,
yeah.
you see in the back of the issues too, it's also this kind of community building as well with, the
Mhm.
letters that he writes to the readers and having these things for sale. It just feels like it's like this Ouroboros of angst that we all got swept up
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Also
that
a lot of like hieroglyphics, interest in Egyptology, which if you're in high school, I mean, you're probably studying that. So you're going to be very pleased to see it. I was.
yeah.
I
Utilizing
don't love
dazzling
that
stark
shirt.
black
Oh,
which one?
please. I don't love
Oh,
the,
no,
that cross-armed Johnny. It's a little hard to make out.
Yeah, it doesn't. It looks like the Crow more than
Mm.
Johnny.
Mhm. Oh,
You
they
know?
talk about the crow in a later issue.
Do they?
Yeah, John they go to see something, I can't remember what the movie is, but there's, like, 2, I guess they would call them, like, posers behind Johnny that are like, "We should have gone to see The Crow." So, I don't think there's any love for that, unfortunately.
Man, I worked at a movie theater. I was 16 when that came out, and
Nice.
they were like when it premiered, there was like a line out the door of all these guys in the makeup. Like I was like, where the hell did you guys come
Hell yeah.
from?
Awesome.
That was the greatest job on earth.
I believe it.
um, I mean, being a cartoonist is pretty great too, but that's probably number one. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and then so that's the end of the issue. I didn't go into it like going, yeah, I'm gonna read this and then like want to check the rest out. But now I want to check the rest out. I want to see what it is. And the funny thing is I guess he was like the thing that got him into comics was he had the Ninja Turtles comics that when they first came out.
Mhm.
And he was saying something about how it that they felt like everybody else just saw mutant um, you know, creatures, ninjas. I held them and they felt like dirty and like gritty to me. And they
Mhm.
were. Like the actual very first ones, they were like, you know, he could feel like they were handmade and like all this stuff and that's
Yeah.
what inspired him and that's super interesting to me, especially since from the sounds of it, clearly there's no like kids Johnny the Homicidal Maniac television show, but you know, this seems like this was a pretty damn successful indie comic in its own right. So
Mhm.
for him to be able to get the, you know, get that spark from, you know, Eastman and Laird and then go and do this himself and you know it spun off into a career in animation and stuff. It's like
Mhm.
good for him.
Yeah, I'd like to. I should make some time and try to find some like recent interviews with him.
Yeah.
Because I would love to hear how he looks back on these comics. You know, at first I was like, oh, this is going to be kind of like cringy and embarrassing. But as long as you can kind of like take your coolness for like an hour and just like hang it up in your closet and leave it there, I think you can really enjoy Johnny in the year 2024.
Yeah, I think so too. I completely agree because I went in going, you know, oh man, what am I going to read here? And saying like realizing as I'm reading it that a lot of people reading it today would be like, "Oh no, you can't do this. This is terrible." But you know,
Mhm.
that's not me. I'm not like that at all. So I really like did find some enjoyment in it and was able to like pull a lot of really awesome stuff out of it. So thanks for sharing this one.
Absolutely. It's all about slave labor right now. I'm gonna go back and revisit Lenore, which I really loved. I just like had a wild hair recently thinking about
Hmm.
the comics that I read as a teenager. And there was
Yeah,
one that I had it in the recesses of my memory, and I was like, I'm 99% sure this was slave labor, but you know, who do I know that was reading that stuff that can like bring it up
I saw
on
you
a
posting
moment's
about that.
notice. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
I found it. I did find the
You did?
comic. Yes, it's called Nightmares and Fairy Tales, and the reason that I couldn't find it was because the series Nightmares and Fairy Tales, like, launched, and then they launched another one that started at number 1 with the same title. So this was number 1 in that other series, and
Oh.
yeah, that's it but it was really kind of amazing because in my head, it was a lot more sort of dense and elaborate. It was almost kinda more
Hmm.
like emotionally sort of detached, like a Kuriko Nananan comic, but reading it
Hmm.
now, I'm like, "Oh, this feels very." I would post this comic on LiveJournal, you know,
Hmm.
back in the
Yeah.
day, and
Right.
it's great to see. There's something about the sincerity of these comics, I think, that really just speaks to me. You know,
Yeah.
I always love when cartoonists feel like, "I'm gonna take a stand against something in my own comic." Like, I remember those Blue Monday comics, China Cluxton Major. She
Yeah.
really hated They Might Be Giants and would make characters wear very specific t-shirts about how much they hated They Might Be Giants. And I was like, as a kid, I was like, "Who makes those shirts? Like, what are we doing? Does someone actually print those?" And of course, it's like, no, she just really hates this fucking band. And Johnny is similar in that
Yeah.
vein, where it's like, I hate The Crow, I hate Nine Inch Nails, I hate da 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 da. Da. And it's a fun little time capsule for those kind of sentiments.
Right. That's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Of course.
I've got your Instagram up in the ticker tape. But where else can people find you?
You can find me, my website is katieskellycomics.com, and you can find my graphic novels through Fantagraphics.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Join my Patreon to see my work before anyone else, plus score physical sketchbooks, mini comics, and commissions delivered right to your door, and reading my new books, Something Seems Off and Three-Headed Pigman, as they are made. Go to my website to order original art, commissions, and my books, Lost Angels, Spectral: A Showcase of Fear, Chaotic Neutral, and more. Gray Matter Drip, The Art of Chris Anderson, is available now from Cosmic Lion Productions. Here are the upcoming conventions I'll be at the time of this recording. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. It helps spread the word. Thanks.